Now, you've probably seen or heard some of those ads on TV or the radio where they're talking about thieves being able to kind of steal that title to your home. And a lot of times they're going to offer a service that's supposedly going to prevent that home title theft. In these cases, the property would require an owner's signature to be forged, which of course is a crime. And if that forgery is happening, that that transaction is not going to be legitimate, so it wouldn't be kind of noticed or recognized by a court or anything like that. So that's kind of one of those things to keep in mind, that these crimes take forgery. So once that kind of forgeries happen, that transaction would kind of be null and void. But to also kind of, as you hear about all these, especially with the advertisements and all that, you want to be cautious of companies that promise that they can prevent fraud from happening. Nobody can really prevent a crime from happening before it happens. So that's kind of one of those things to keep in mind. And I do like to tell people that I've spoken to several of the Register of Deeds in our state, and they tell me it's an issue that they very rarely see. So it's not a common crime in the state of South Carolina. So keep that in mind. And kind of, Register of Deeds might be one of those things that you haven't heard too much about, or you may not think very much about. So each county in our state has a Register of Deeds office, and they're going to record things like deeds, mortgages, tax liens, and other documents kind of pertaining to land transfers in that county. And the Register of Deeds, they're kind of own government office in 23 of the counties in our state. And in the other 23, the functions are performed by the clerk of court. So depending on where you live, it could potentially be the clerk of court who kind of handles all of those transactions. And the other half of the state, there is an actual Register of Deeds. So it's either going to be a Register of Deeds office that is its own separate entity, or you would go through the county clerk's website. And this link here on the SC Judicial Branch website, that is a great resource. And I'm going to click on that here real quick, just kind of give you a better idea of what this website looks like. And it's going to list out those counties that we mentioned there. So, the 23 that have their own separate government office for it, that will be listed. But if you go here to the county map, I'm going to pull that up real quick, and I'm going to pull up one that I know is its own separate one. We'll look at Berkeley County. And if you kind of scroll down, it will kind of list that Register of Deeds office for you there. It'll pull up the clerk of court, but if you look down a little bit further, it's going to show you the Register of Deeds office for that county. So that's a good resource to take advantage of. And again, that's all going to be on the SC Judicial Branch website. And if you download these slides, it's a great link to keep in mind there, and it will get you to that little county map where you can find all that contact information directly. Now, kind of more on the home title fraud subject. In our state, property documents must be signed in the presence of 2 witnesses and acknowledged by a notary public. And this is kind of set up so it will hopefully prevent somebody from, forging signatures and things like that. So if you have those witnesses in the notary public, hopefully there's that check on everybody that's going to in the room, and there's a little bit more kind of checks and balances there with that. And, the Register of Deeds also say that, a lot of times lenders are going to perform their own kind of title searches and things like that before they loan money to somebody for a property search. And they're doing that as well so they can protect that money that they're loaning. They don't want to give money over to somebody who's, committing a forgery or something like that. So they're kind of doing their own checks as well, too. So that's a kind of good checks on that process as well. And, one of the things that you're encouraged to do to be able to find signs of, title fraud or something like that would be credit monitoring or public record monitoring. But it is also kind of important to kind of keep in mind with those types of things that they can only notify you after a document has been recorded. So there's really no guarantee that fraud will not be attempted, but these credit monitoring and public record monitoring, they will kind of notify you as those things happen so you can kind of catch it quickly. I'll give you kind of a good example of this. A lot of counties may offer a monitoring service that's going to give you alerts that anytime that there's documents related to your name that are filed in those offices. And again, this is kind of an example of what the Berkeley County website has, and it's the service that they provide. And it's going to kind of give you in there, you put in names, things like that, that you want to set up alerts for, and it's going to send you an email notification anytime those documents are moved with that name. But kind of the important thing to keep in mind with that is if you have a common name and there's property that's, being transferred or something like that with that same name and it's a common name, you'll get those alerts for that. So you're going to want to double check that it's actually you or the name that you're kind of worried about, and make sure that all those other facts are kind of what they are. So especially if you have a common name, that's something to keep in mind. I hear about people worried about those types of things moving through their county sometimes. So, if you're setting up an alert with a name that's fairly common, you might be getting a few more alerts. So take a look at those documents pretty carefully before you kind of start taking action on that. And of course, if you're worried about these types of things with home title fraud, you're going to want to check in with your county register of deeds or that county clerk of courts, whichever one, depending on which state or which county you're living in. But you want to talk to them, kind of see if they offer this type of service. And if so, sign up through the service that they're offering. And a little bit of a couple of other quick additional tips. We've mentioned it a little bit earlier, but you want to check your credit reports at least once a year. Again, you're going to look for errors, unfamiliar records, unauthorized inquiries, things like that, especially if you're seeing accounts showing up that you didn't authorize. That might be a sign of something going on. You want to monitor your bills, but especially those utility bills. And if you're not getting those utility bills for that property, you want to notify that utility company right away, kind of see what's going on, make sure that somebody hasn't changed that property to, another billing address or something like that that's going on. If you find those things, notify those utility companies right away. And if you suspect identity theft, you can, again, file an identity theft report with our office, consumer.sc.gov, and there's our phone number on the screen too. But depending on kind of what's going on, especially if it's property, you're probably going to need to seek the advice of an attorney. And again, SC Bar has a referral service. If you need help finding an attorney, you don't have one kind of lined up already, they can point you in the right direction. They have a referral service, and we're happy to pass that information along to you too sometime.